He's obsessed with the genetic composition of the murderers and the violent people who are in the country. We do have 13,000 murderers here. We have even more people here who've committed sexual crimes, violent sexual crimes.
What about the genetic composition of murderers here in the United States who are American citizens? What should we do about that?
Fine. I think it's perfectly fine to acknowledge that there is a long body of research that there are some people who are genetically predisposed to violence. But today, there has been an effort to make it seem like Donald Trump is saying something about immigrants when all he is commenting on are the violent murderers who are in the country. It's simply not true what's being said about him today. And I can't believe, honestly, what I'm hearing. I've seen people all day long attacking Trump because he's worried that we have 13,000 violent murderers.
But he's calling attention. There are white people in this country who are committing far more murders than immigrants and other Americans.
There's also white immigrants in the country,
too. The point is that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. He is generating nativist language to appeal to genetic basis of behavior. That is a classic definition of what we mean by white supremacy.
When I talk about why does he keep doing this, it's because this is not the only time he's talked about this. He has said broadly that immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country. So that has also happened.
That's literally a white supremacist trope, by the way.
But I mean, you can't explain that away.
I think what Scott is saying is absolutely accurate when it comes to this being very unfair. There have been many cases when I'm on your show and other shows, and I will call out when I think it's wrong. But in this case, I don't think that's what he was saying. This goes back to that nature versus nurture debate. This has nothing to do with race. I don't care whether it's a white person, a black person, an immigrant, an American. Somebody who kills somebody may actually have bad genes, and that's been studied for many, many years. We don't want people murdering people in this country. I don't care whether they are born here or they come from somewhere else. And we certainly, when we already have crime problem in our country with people who are born here, we don't want 13,000
He's not making that argument.
We don't want over
He's not making that argument.
We don't want over 400,000 convicted criminals coming to this country and staying here for decades because, as we all know, we have a broken immigration system in which we have a court backlog that extends up to a decade,
He's not making
maybe
that
more.
argument about people who are here.
Surely everyone at this table knows that the rate of immigrant crime is actually lower than the rate of crime by U.S.
So you're okay
natural-born
with
citizens.
13,000 murderers being in the country because of the rate of crime?
That's not really how it works.
Madison,
that's not okay.
When
Hang on a second.
there's an immigrant,
Hang on a second, Jay, because I'll let you continue. But I just have to address, look, that number, it's wildly misleading to suggest that is a number that references a small period of time. That is like over the course of many decades.
I don't think anybody at this table talked about the reference of time. The fact is they're here.
13,000
And if they've been here for decades, that's even worse.
13,000 people
It's other violent crimes.
were
But what y'all are missing is that
convicted,
you're not
who were
paying
incarcerated
attention.
over the course of decades is not a sign that there is any greater incidence of crime.
Well,
among
considering that we've
immigrants than
seen the
among
numbers
natural-born
quadruple of the
citizens.
people coming in, we may
But
not
what
be
about
able
the people
to.
here? This is my point. What about the genetic makeup of people who are already
I
in
have a
America
problem with that
who are
too.
doing that?
And guess what? We
why
don't
isn't
want
it?
them
But wait a
here
minute. Why isn't
out
it
in the
pointed
streets
to?
free
Why
either.
isn't it articulated? Why isn't it repeated?
Because
Why
he's
isn't it
talking
made the basis
specifically about the
for his
open
argument?
border. He's not
Because
talking about murderers in general.
A moment ago, you said he wasn't talking about immigration. Now you're saying he is talking about immigration. The fact is,
He's
he is
asking why we're
lying.
not talking
He got
about other
asked about
criminals.
immigration.
He got asked
He got
about
asked a question
immigration.
about it.
You
The reason he
know,
was
Scott, you know
Scott,
full
he got
well
asked
that
about
he
it.
has
We said he's
repeated
not
this
talking
lie
about a specific
for
Guys,
8
one at a
years.
time, please.
He has repeated this lie for 8 years, that immigrants are in some way more prone to criminality, that they're less human, that they have bad blood, that they have bad genetics. I don't understand how you can mince words around the racist nature of
He's
that.
not
he
saying
was
all
asked about.
immigrants, and
He
he's
said.
not racist.
He
His
said
wife's
when
an
he came
immigrant.
down the elevator, he said that Mexico was sending their rapists and their murderers.
Mm-hmm.
They're sending
And
people
these
who are
stats would tell
seeking
us that a lot of
economic
rapists and murderers have
at
gotten
a
here.
lower rate than natural-born
So you're
citizens.
So you're okay with them if it's a lower rate? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I don't
we
want
don't
to
want rapists and
scapegoat
murderers
immigrants.
here. It's
I
not a
don't-
scapegoat.
Well, we
don't.
don't
If it's
scapegoat
preventable,
immigrants.
if it's preventable that
let me
people
let
come across
the
the
senator get
border.
in here. Go ahead, Al.
We don't go like, okay, you're a rapist, you're in. You're a rapist, okay, come on in. That's not how it works. I mean, these are people who are not brought in knowing that they are rapists. So there is such a thing as, it turns out that, and I don't know, and I think Abby's right, this is over decades. And so many of these rapists came in when Donald Trump
And so why haven't we gotten them out? That's the problem. I
Well,
mean,
if
if they're,
Madison-
some of them have been not
Madison,
only convicted, they've been
many of them,
deported, and they're
they're-
still roaming the country.
No,
That's a huge problem.
that is not true.
No,
Okay,
some of them
they are-
have been
they are not
convicted
in
of
the
murder outside of their
custody.
countries. We find out about it later,
Madison,
then
the
they
s-
get
the
deported,
numbers
and
that
they're
you're-
still roaming the nation.
The
That's a
numbers that
fact,
you're
Abby.
referring to,
There are many
those
more white rapists
migrants
in this country
are.
than immigrants will ever account for.
Trust me,
Michael,
The
I don't want any
overwhelming
rapists in this
inclination
country.
of
Michael,
white
hang
men
on
to
one
be
second.
seen as the perpetrators of violence that is extraordinary in this country is well documented, but you don't appeal to a genetic basis. This is classic white supremacy, and your justification of it is an extension of that logic.
No one's talking about race. That's the problem.
No.
We're
Yes,
just
you
talking
are.
about
You're
immigrants
just
with
not
bad
saying it.
genetics and
You
bad
are
blood.
absolutely
That
speaking
is what
about
race
race.
We're not
When you
talking
talk
about
about
race. Not
genetic-
all
when
immigrants
you talk about
are
genetic basis of
minority.
behavior,
Not
what do
every
you say?
immigrant's a
When you-
minority.
of
Any
course not.
immigrant that commits a crime, we want out of this country. I don't know how we could be arguing about that point right
You
there.
know,
We're
you know,
talking
hang
about
on a
white
second.
supremacist arguments about genetic.
Hang on a second. Let me
predispositions.
play.
Sorry.
Let me just play just so that people understand. We've been talking about Trump's comments about immigrants over a course of time. He's been talking about this for a while and talking specifically about basically people's genetic makeup of the people who are coming to this country. Listen.
Nobody has any idea where these people are coming from. It's poisoning the blood of our country. They're poisoning the blood of our country. They're poisoning our country. A lot of it's about the genes, isn't it? Don't you believe? The racehorse theory, you think was so different? You know, I believe in the racehorse theory. Fast horses produce fast horses.
This is an old thing. This is an old that you can identify who's a rapist by their color and by their immigrant status. I think this is offensive.